This is The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
Been running a strange program, y'all.
Now, here's Frank Morano.
You, but in our area, I have seen nothing but headlines about a heat wave. And New York Times, for instance, has the headline, "An early heat wave is sweeping the country." Now, it's not even summer yet. You still got a couple of days. And even though the official start of summer is still days away, the Midwest yesterday was already enveloped in extreme levels of heat and humidity that could last throughout much of the week. The heat index, which is a measure of how the temperature feels, hit 102 degrees in Cincinnati. Similarly, sweltering conditions are expected to push into the Northeast beginning tomorrow and continuing into the weekend. The area sometimes reaches such high temperatures in late July or August, but it will be it's a little early for this amount of heat. I don't mind the heat. I mean, when I say I don't mind it, that's mostly because I'm indoors and asleep when it's during the day. But I would mind it if I was somebody that worked outdoors. If I was a construction worker and I was doing a lot of manual labor outdoors, you can bet this would be quite oppressive. If this was even, I look at the people who are postal workers or Amazon delivery people, and yeah, they get to drive around, but they're still walking around to all these houses out in the heat. That's when the people that do physical outdoor labor when it's this hot, those are the people that make me realize how lucky I am to be able to do this in a climate-controlled, air-conditioned studio, just pontificating and trying to be entertaining for a few hours every day. People that are out there doing construction, those guys are really working. And when it's 100 degrees outside, they are really working. But I was wondering, if you, given that there's a lot of people listening to this show, all walks of life, young, old, black, white, the heat or the weather in general is something that affects everybody. There's no escaping the heat. And I mean, unless you just don't go outside, but who wants to do that? And I was wondering if you had any suggestions on how to survive a heat wave. When I say suggestions, let's put aside the obvious, right? Let's put aside go in a pool. Let's put aside stay in an air-conditioned area. Let's just assume we've said those. What are some unorthodox methods that you might have for surviving a heat wave? You know, we have two listeners there. It's a couple, Chick and Lou, who don't have air conditioning. They have lived in the same house for many years and they don't have air conditioning. And one of their tips, I think is, I hope I'm not betraying any confidences here, is I am told that Lou sleeps naked all the time. When it's this hot, especially, he is sleeping naked. I remember Lynn Samuels, who was a terrific radio talk show host back in the day. She unfortunately passed away. She never had air conditioning either. And one of her tips was she would take a bath and then she would open all the windows. And for some reason, that simulated a cooling effect. A bath followed by the breeze, if there was a breeze, of all the open windows. That's the kind of pro tip that I'm looking for. Because look, we have window units in our house, so we have air conditioning, and when it's this hot, we'll keep them going, especially in my son's room. But no one wants to use these air conditioners all day and night, and your electric bill is going to go crazy unless you have solar panels, and you are going to, risk causing a whole bunch of people to suffer brownouts and things like that. That's where you always get those warnings. Don't set your air conditioning below 78 degrees, even when it's this hot out, to conserve power usage. Look, there's something to be said for that. If everybody is pumping their air conditioning like crazy and it's falling below a certain level and there's this much energy usage, it's going to play a role. Now, it is interesting to me. I'll share a letter that I got with you a little bit later. We are going to read through your email correspondence in a bit. If you want to email me and have a letter read on the air, you can do so, frank.morano@redappleaudionetworks.com. That's frank.morano at redappleaudionetworks.com. But here we are this week, a heat wave enveloping much of the country. I'd like to know if you have any suggestions on how to stay cool, whether it's, a creative way to enjoy an ice pop, whether it's putting a hat in the freezer before you put it on, whatever it is, I'd love to hear it. 800-848-9222, 800-848-9222. Matt Blaze, how do you handle the heat? Are you bothered by the heat?
Well, I do have air conditioning as well, so I stay inside.
So you stay inside, right?
Yeah,
and you have a swimming pool too, right?
Right.
And do you use it?
When it gets really hot, I do. Mm-hmm. Because the water's nice. It's weird because the water's warm, but it's like compared to the heat, it's still, and it's 85 degrees, the water, but it still just feels perfect. That's when the water feels perfect.
You don't have a heater in the pool, right?
No.
Yeah.
No.
I have some friends that keep the water so warm, which I hate when it's this hot.
Yeah, when it's this hot, you want the sun just to heat up the water.
Exactly.
And that's fine. That's
right.
Because it'll get to 85, 86 degrees, which is pretty warm for water. In terms of the air conditioning, and I don't think it works the same as with window units because you're manufacturing the air. But I know with central air, like even when it's 95 degrees out, the central air, if it's sized right for your house, will only put out like 80 degrees of the temperature of the air will be 80 degrees. It only goes like 15 degrees below what the air is that it takes in. So even though it's cooler, it's still hot. So you'll never get, unless you have a really giant AC that's supposed to get it like freezer cold. But I know my air conditioning will be running all day because it'll never get that cold because it's so hot outside. But I would say, as a tip, wet towel around your neck.
Wet towel, with cold water on it?
Yep, a wet towel, cold water, like a hand towel, and just put that around your neck.
That's pretty good. I like that. Cool. What do you keep it around there all the time when you're?
Yeah, once it's wet, it'll stay damp, and then obviously it's getting hot, and it may dry up. So once in a while, you stick it under the sink, cold water, rinse it out so you're not dripping, and put a cold towel around your neck.
All right. I like it. Give me your pro tip. 800-848-9222. That's 800-848-9222. You know who I have a tip for? And I don't mean it in what we thought was the to ensure promptness category. I mean it in the advice category. Our ice cream man, Jesse, he comes on our block every day around 3:45, and he's a good ice cream man. He does a good job. He's got a decent enough selection, not a crazy good selection, but it's decent. He does not take credit cards, so I can't tell you how often a parent, because there's a lot of children on our block, a parent will be at the window of the ice cream truck, and they'll say, "All right, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want?" And usually one parent will treat for 4 or 5 kids. And, then another day, another parent will do it. But a lot of times a parent will not have cash on them and they'll want to use their credit card or something. and he does, or Venmo, and they don't take Venmo or a credit card. Now, I always make an effort to have cash, but they should take Venmo. That's my 2 cents. If you're an ice cream man today, that's my suggestion to you. 800-848-9222. John, give me a pro tip on beating the heat.
Well, for working outside all day, I take a little bit of creatine that the bodybuilders use. That way, the water stays in my muscles and they don't cramp up if I don't happen to drink enough water or anything.
John, this is
me for years.
This is exactly the kind of thing that I want to hear, because this is something I have never heard before. Does this actually work? Do you know what you're talking about, or are you just making this up? This is really interesting.
No, I've used it for years just because I've noticed when I first started doing all this years ago that sometimes you don't have access to as much water as you should. So I just kind of figured out that that's what it does for bodybuilders. It keeps the fluid in the muscles. So I figured, let me give it a whirl. I tried it, and ever since, I never cramp up outside anymore, no matter how hot it gets or anything, as long as I remember to take it.
I love that, John. John, do you work outside now?
Yeah, construction.
Wow, see, you're exactly the kind of person I'm talking about. You're the guys I walk by and I say, oh, those poor guys. Those are guys that are really working. Good for you, John. Thanks for the tip. That's exactly what I'm talking about. 800-848-9222. Jason in Illinois, you have a pro tip for us?
I've heard some stories and seen some stuff on TikTok about little styrofoam coolers and regular little house fans and bags of ice. They can keep rooms cool for 3 hours. You just got to look it up, know what you're doing.
Well, so, Jason, take me through this. So, styrofoam cooler, okay,
Yeah.
and then what?
You put the ice in the cooler, and you blow the fan through a hole in the cooler and out the top of the cooler.
You know, actually,
it can last hours.
That is interesting, Jason. I've never tried that before, but thank you. That is not entirely dissimilar to what happened when President Garfield was shot. When James Garfield was shot, there was, he was convalescing in the White House for a couple of months, and they didn't have air conditioning back then. They invented, first of all, they had Alexander Graham Bell invent a metal detector, which was wild, to try to find the bullet within him. And there's a wonderful book about this called Destiny of the Republic, which is one of my favorite history books or presidential books that I've ever read. And I can't recommend it enough, by Candace Millard, I believe is the author. And just as far as that goes, as far as that metal detector goes, Alexander Graham Bell didn't realize when he's using this metal detector on Garfield, not the cat, but the president, that he was sitting, or he was lying on one of the very rare beds with metal springs in it. So this metal detector was going off like crazy. So they thought it didn't work. Meanwhile, the metal detector did work, but they didn't know that he was on a metal bed at the time. So it kept pointing them in the wrong direction of where the bullet was. But they developed sort of an impromptu air conditioning unit, and it's not entirely dissimilar from that styrofoam cooler method that Jason just alluded to. 800-848-9222, 800-848-9222. Don in St. Louis, listening on KMOX. What do you got for us, Don?
Well, I think there's two ways you can go about it. If I was heated and I had to get some sleep, sometime I have put hand towels in the refrigerator and froze them. And as I was going to sleep, I might put that on my chest or put it on my forehead. And there's also those little packets that you get that you would put to keep things frozen. You can get those. You can wrap those in towels. That'll happen at night. But you can also take the handkerchiefs that the neckerchiefs, put those in the refrigerator, and you can freeze those in water, and you can put those around your neck or up under your hat to keep you cool.
These are all good. You know, I don't know if you were affected by this 21 years ago, Don. Were you affected by that massive blackout back in 2003?
Yes.
Okay, so you were affected. I know some parts of the country weren't. I know in Jersey they weren't affected at all, but where I live, it was bad, and it was very hot out. And I remember trying to fall asleep that night and with no air conditioning because you had no power, and I couldn't do it. Not only no power, but I couldn't even put on a ceiling fan because there was no electricity. And I had such a difficult time sleeping. And this is why I've never really gotten the allure of living in Florida, because I've heard from so many different people that have lived down there. And it's like this all the time where you essentially wake up sweating, which is not for me. So I couldn't fall asleep. So what I actually did was I went out to the car and I turned on the car and lied down in the car with the air conditioning blasting just to get 20, 30, 40 minutes of being cool and being able to sleep. Had I had your method, this handkerchief/rag method in the freezer, which I guess is kind of common sense, I would have been able to sleep without going and wasting all my gasoline.
I think it will work for anybody.
I like it, Don. Don, thank you. 800-848-9222, 800-848-9222. The original Rick is in Original Jersey. Hi.
Yeah, good morning, Frank. Good morning. I just thought you'd find this interesting. All these people talking about ice and fans over the ice. I'm looking at it right now, something from my childhood. My father bought an air conditioner. It actually, you pour ice cubes in the back of it, and it blows air over. It's exactly what that guy was talking about with the styrofoam case with the ice in it, only it was a commercial version of that. And my mother sent my father out to buy an air conditioner, and he came back with that, and she blew her top. You know, it's like you literally have to pour trays of ice cubes in the back of the unit, and then the fan blows the air over the ice.
You know,
what
was it called? I never heard of an air conditioning.
Weather Zone. I'm looking at it right now, and it's all, old and all that, but Weather Zone. And it was this little box about the size of a bread box. You poured ice cube trays in the back, and it just blew air over it. That was it.
So it's better than a regular air conditioner because it doesn't use Freon? Is that what it is?
Well, in those days, in 1954, regular air conditioners had to be 220 volts. You didn't have 110. So you had to have your whole house rewired. That's why so many places didn't have air conditioning. It was only until the 1960s that you had 110 air conditioning. So that was the only way you could get air conditioning if you had 110. This basically this Weather Zone.
I like it. Okay, a Weather Zone. Do they still make them?
No, I'm sure not. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Of course it is.
Ice cubes in the back. It's
but I like that. Do you still use yours though? No.
It's for I think my old stuff out just to look at all the old cameras, all the old little Walkmans and Watchmans, and I just like them to have up and
Yeah, I still can't bring myself, and it's driving my wife crazy because I just have a massive mountain of clutter that's just growing. I can't bring myself to throw out my old portable television set, even though it doesn't receive transmission anymore because of the conversion to digital. I think we've talked about that before. Rick, thank you. 800-848-9222, 800-848-9222. Alex is in Brooklyn. Hello, Alex.
Hey, good morning, Frank.
Morning.
So a solution I thought of, because I think the way you feel from temperature also has to do with mentally, also in the brain somewhat. So I think a possible solution could be, if, say, you're going out for a half hour in the sweltering heat, if you put on a lot of layers and you take out all your winter equipment and your coats and sweaters and scarves and you layer it up one on top of the other, and you go out, and every 5 minutes you take off one layer after another, you're going to keep on feeling not so hot for a couple of minutes every time you take off, every singular layer. And if you end up with no layers at all at some point, you'll just have to wait a couple of minutes till the cops pick you up and they'll put you into an air-conditioned car. So
very good, Alex. I like it. I like it a lot. That's very funny. It's fun. It is funny in that I don't recommend that strategy, putting aside the last aspect of what he said, but I don't recommend that strategy to anybody because you will feel cooler, but for a while you're actually heating up. You're essentially overheating. But what he mentions about your perspective is an important one. When I was young, I don't know why, but when I was young, my parents would take me to a lot of nice restaurants. And one of the things that bothered me, it doesn't really bother me anymore, but one of the things that bothered me as a child was I couldn't stand dark restaurants. I don't know why, and when I say as a child, I mean 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, right? That age range. I guess I grew out of this little idiosyncrasy, but I couldn't stand dark restaurants. And what I noticed a couple of times is I'd get so upset that there was a dark restaurant that what I would do is for 5 or 10 minutes, I would put on sunglasses inside the dark restaurant. And then after 5 or 10 minutes, you take the sunglasses off and the restaurant doesn't look dark anymore. It looks bright because your eyes have adjusted to being in a super dark place. Now, I don't recommend that to anybody, but for 10-year-old me, it worked like a charm. By the way, 800-848-9222. There's a heat wave coming. You're going to hear a lot of heat wave themed commentary and news alerts, warnings to stay indoors, to go to cooling centers. In fact, Lorraine, who's kind enough to watch Carmine yesterday and Wednesday for Juneteenth, is going to take Carmine to the movies for the first time, to the movie theater. They're going to go see this new Garfield movie. This one is about the cat, not about the president. But I'm curious how he does with that whole thing. It's a fun. I think he's going to be into it. We'll see. I haven't taken him yet, but I'm glad Lorraine is able to take him. Gina is in Brooklyn. You have a pro tip for us, Gina.
Yes, Frank. My mother told me years ago, she was a nurse, that if we drink hot fluids when we're hot, it's counterintuitive, but it actually helps you to retain less heat inside your body. And now I'm looking it up on the internet, and they're saying recent studies prove this advice that was given to some of us from our nanas, but it actually was my mother who told me this.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I've heard that same thing. So you would say for today, for people to enjoy a nice hot cup of coffee, nice hot cup of tea, nice hot bowl of soup, and eschew the iced tea and iced coffee and the smoothies.
Well, it says that it would prove better to do that, except if you're in a sauna or if you're in a swimming pool where you can't sweat at all. Because with the hot beverage, it will help you to help your sweat evaporate. That's what it says.
So you're having a hot beverage today?
Well, I drink black coffee all the time, so I know this happens to be true because I paid attention to my mother's advice. But it does seem counterintuitive.
Right, but I've seen that as well. The science does support you and your mother on this, Gina. And you know who else agrees with you, and thanks for the call, is Cliff Clavin. Cliff Clavin, that great philosopher, explained that just as you would drink hot beverages when it's hot out to actually cool you, when it's cold outside, like during a blizzard, you should be drinking a nice ice cold beer.
Well, what I can't fathom is how one can drink ice cold beer in freezing weather.
Cliff, explanation, please.
Now, how do you know he has one?
$5 says he does, 10 says it's a doozy. When the British ruled the Punjab, $10 all the way. They drank steaming hot pots of tea on the hottest days of the year to balance out their inside and outside temperatures. See, conversely, drinking an ice-cold drink on a cold day actually results in a more comfortable body temperature.
All right. Why do you drink ice-cold beer on a hot day?
Mr. Clavin, what else are you going to do with it?
I love it. Show is still so great. 800-848-9222. Robert calling from the great WCBM in Baltimore. Hi, Robert.
Hey, something I used to do all the time is put a wet shirt on and or wet my hair. I used to go out and jog a lot, even when it was 90 degrees or more. it's like you're walking around with your own little air conditioner. Now, it doesn't answer some of the other things that people have been talking about, but for that thing where you have to be outside for a little while, soak yourself down, it's called heat of vaporization, basic physics, and you will lose, or at least you'll lose some body heat that you would not if you were not wet.
So put on a wet T-shirt. That's the strategy.
But you got to keep it wet. And if you're out in the heat, 15 minutes later, it'll be sort of drying off. So I would have a spray bottle with me that I'd keep in the shade. I could spray it all over my shirt every 15 minutes. I could jog for an hour or two in 90 degrees, and I wouldn't die.
I like this.
But it's risky. If it's hot outside, you don't want to be drinking hot beverages because your body needs to get rid of the heat. Well, if it's cold outside, you want to drink warm stuff.
But what about what Gina and the scientists are saying, that by drinking a hot beverage, it causes you to sweat, and that actually cools you down?
When you're really hot, your whole body is hot. You're hot inside, too. And one of the ways when someone's really got a heat stroke and you bring them into the hospital, and you put coolness all over them. You put coolness in the IV. You put coolness in drinking. You put coolness around their body. You actually stick them in a cold tub. So, you try to cool them any way you can. The last thing you would do is put heat into them.
All right. Well, so be it. So I guess you're calling genius.
That's really what we do in the hospital.
I believe you. And I know you're a physician. Thanks, Robert. Robert says Gina's mother is full of it. And Cliff Clavin, apparently. I don't know how I feel about that. All right. 800-848-9222. Mickey is in the Queens. Hello, Mickey.
Oh, good morning, Frank. Thank you for taking the call. Don't drink cold drinks when it's very hot, because the body has to work triple hard to change it to your body temperature. I heard that sometime, and I drink room temperature even if it's very hot.
Oh, so you say not hot or cold, but room temperature?
Yeah, room temperature, yes.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, Mickey, thank you. So now we have 3 views on what the temperature should be of your drinks today. So you know what I think you should do? And I may try this. Let's try all 3. Have a hot beverage, then a cold beverage, then a room temperature beverage. See what cools you down the most. Right? Makes sense. Matt, where are you on this cold, hot room
It's funny because last week I had some landscapers at my house, and one of the guys wanted hot coffee, and it was hot out. And we were like, why do you want hot coffee? And he said, this is what I drink. And I'm looking it up just to see what it says. And I found it says, according to a study at the University of Ottawa, drinking a hot drink when it's warm outside can cool you down so long as you're not already sweating. So if you're not sweating, it will cause you to sweat. I guess if you're already sweating, it's not good. And it's saying that a hot beverage triggers your body's sweat response without raising your core temperature too much. But I guess if you're already sweating, your temperature is already raised.
Okay.
Is what it's saying.
All right. Very good.
I don't like drinking hot fluid ever. The only time I ever drink anything hot is when I'm sick to soothe my throat. That's the only time. So when it's really hot, I'm drinking water.
Even
cold water.
Even when it's cold, you're not drinking anything hot?
No, well, not usually. Only when I'm sick. I don't drink coffee. If anything, it would be tea. But yeah, it's just the hot beverages. I just don't like them. I don't know.
So be it. Well, are you doing Diet Dr. Pepper today? So you bring in one yesterday.
I tried Dr. Pepper Zero today.
Oh, I didn't even know that was a thing.
I didn't either. And I got it. I got to say, Diet Dr. Pepper tastes more like regular Dr. Pepper than Dr. Pepper Zero.
Interesting.
Dr. Pepper Zero had like a little hint of Dr. Pepper taste, but that was it.
Okay. All right. So be it.
People know.
Hey, we're going to go. Those of you that are on hold, I will get to you, but we're going to read through your mail correspondence in a moment. And if you want to send me an email, you can. frank.morano@redappleaudionetworks.com. Straight ahead.
The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
Long Island is more exciting than ever at Jake's 58 Casino Hotel. Get ready to zoom into some serious cash with Zoom Ball every Wednesday in June. Win up to $500,000. 1 point equals 1 entry. 2 lucky winners will be drawn at the top of every hour from 1 to 5 p.m. to play Zoom Ball. Discover the excitement at Jake's 58 Casino Hotel.
If gambling is a problem for you or someone, please call the 24-hour toll-free helpline at 877-8-HOPE-NY or text NY.
This is the story of the one. As a maintenance engineer, he hears things differently. To the untrained ear, everything on his shop floor might sound fine, but he can hear gears grinding or a belt slipping. So he steps in to fix the problem at hand before it gets out of hand. And he knows Grainger's got the right product he needs to get the job done, which is music to his ears. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
It's The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
Singing Cruel Summer. If you want to know what kind of music we're playing on this program, join the Facebook group. Just go onto Facebook and type Morano, M-O-R-A-N-O, radio, fans and haters. It's also meant to be a discussion group for people to discuss the subjects that we talk about on this show. It's not meant to be a group for just posting general interest news. It's it's meant to be a group where people are nice to one another. I don't mind if you badmouth me, but I really get frustrated when other folks start attacking one another because they disagree, especially over a political issue or something along those lines. So just be nice to one another if you join the group. In fact, we're looking for more good, nice people to join the group so it drowns out, hopefully, the nabobs of negativism, which is, I think, what Spiro Agnew called them. All right. I have gotten a lot of correspondence from you via text message, via email. I did not see any new snail mail today, and even via Facebook. So if you want your letter read on the air, go ahead and email me, frank.morano@redappleaudionetworks.com. That's frank.morano@redappleaudionetworks.com as we embark upon...
Letters, oh, we get letters. We get your letters every day. Mailman, mailman, mail today. Reach right in and pull one out. Those letters, I love those letters. Let's find out what you got to say. Oh boy! Mailman, mail today.
This is a great one. This comes to us from Facebook. This is a listener named Michael. He writes, "Good morning. I'm a regular listener of your show, and I find it entertaining and fantastic. What I like most about your show and you as a host, it's not all politics, and I don't hear you making fun or saying derogatory things about other people, which is common on talk shows today. I have a question. I'm interested in reading about Teddy Roosevelt, as I'm an avid reader. So my question to you, which book would you suggest that I start with about Teddy?" I will continue to listen to the show, and I enjoy the videos that you post here on Facebook through the years, especially the book reviews that you've done in the past. I'm not a member of your Facebook group because some of the group members say and print awful stuff, and it's just not for me. So, Frank, I hope that you have a wonderful day, and any direction that you can give with books on the Teddy Roosevelt subject would be appreciated. Thanks. Wonderful question. And for me, it is impossible to answer, because there are so many great books about Theodore Roosevelt. And this is a man that might have been an alien or a robot or something, because he died before he was 60. And he accomplished in 60 years enough for 10 lifetimes. What he did in one of those years, that would be more than most people accomplish in a whole lifetime. So honestly, and I'm not trying to, it's not a cop-out here. It depends on what aspect of Theodore Roosevelt's life you're most interested in. Most people are interested in his presidency. And if that's you, then the book that you need to read is Theodore Rex by Edmund Morris. If a lot of people are interested in Theodore Roosevelt's life before he became president, if that's you, the book you need to read is also an Edmund Morris book called The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt. For me, because I'm a third-party nerd, the aspect of Roosevelt's life that I'm interested in is the aspect of his life that has been the least covered and the least studied by academics, and honestly, probably the one that the fewest people care about. The aspect of TR's life that I'm most interested in is his life after the presidency, especially when he ran for president as a third-party candidate and then wanted to do so again in 1916 and 1920. And if that's you, there's 3 books that I recommend strongly. One, 1920, The Year of the Six Presidents. That is by David Pietruzza. It's not just about Teddy Roosevelt. It's about the election of 1920. And that was an interesting year because that was the only year in American history where you had 6 past, current, or future presidents all running or trying to run for president or vice president. It's extraordinary. It's extraordinary. And the way that David Pietruzza, who's been a guest on this show, tells the story of blending what was going on with Wilson and Franklin Roosevelt and Theodore Roosevelt, and it's just an incredible, incredible story that I can't recommend enough. And obviously Warren G. Harding, who ultimately won that year, and Herbert Hoover, who was also talked about as president that year. So that's one. Another one is another David Pietruzza book. I have to warn you, the epilogue on this book is very controversial. It's almost considered sacrilege by a lot of Roosevelt scholars. And for this reason, I'm not going to tell you what the epilogue says, but because David Pietruzza raises an interesting theory in the epilogue about Theodore Roosevelt and his death. The Theodore Roosevelt Library will not carry that book. And I think a lot of Theodore Roosevelt scholars shy away from it because of that epilogue. But if you're offended by controversial ideas, just stop before you get to the epilogue. It's called Roosevelt at War by David Pietruzza. And this chronicles the run-up to World War I and everything that Roosevelt did during and after. It's a wonderful book. And then another one, and it's been a few years since I've read this, but I read it actually 20 years ago, but I remember it like it was yesterday. It's a masterful look at Roosevelt's post-presidency. It's called When Trumpets Call, Theodore Roosevelt After the White House. It's by Patricia O'Toole. Wonderful book. One of the things that I find so interesting about Theodore Roosevelt, though, is another book I'm going to mention, but an aspect of his life that I find interesting is his relationship with other people. Because on the one hand, you got the sense that he took relationships very seriously, that it really mattered to him, that he put a lot of effort into maintaining relationships, and he'd get broken up when a friend would die, let's say. But you also get the sense at different aspects of his life that everyone was disposable, that everyone existed just for the moment. And if they didn't fit into Theodore Roosevelt's, strategy, then they were out. And that's why a book that I have to recommend is called The Bully Pulpit by Doris Kearns Goodwin. That book focuses on the relationship between two people, William Howard Taft and Theodore Roosevelt, and their role with the media. And they went from being the best of friends to bitter political rivals to ultimately reconciling. And that book tells three stories. It tells Taft's story, Roosevelt's story, and the story of the muckraking media at that time. I recommend that. A lot of people are interested in Theodore Roosevelt's safaris. If that's you, you got to read River of Doubt by Candace Millard. A lot of people are interested in the Spanish-American War. If that's you, I recommend Clay Risen, The Crowded Hour. But I have to mention, there are so many great Theodore Roosevelt books that I've never read. So there could be, and they're on my shelf. I have them all, but I just haven't gotten to them yet. In my fishbowl of the next book that I read, one of them might always be a Theodore Roosevelt book. David McCullough had a book about TR that I haven't read that I'm told is very good. Same thing with Evan Thomas. There's been a lot of others. So these are just the ones that I've read. It all depends on what aspect of your life, of his life, you're interested in. There's a new book now coming out about his relationship with women, meaning his mother and his wives specifically. But a lot of people have written about his time as New York City police commissioner. A lot of people have written about him as a hunter, as a scientist, as a crime fighter, as a soldier, as an explorer. There's just so many aspects of his life to explore that in some ways it's just the most difficult question to answer. All right, this is via text message. In the comments about our interview, our discussion about the Pope and comedians yesterday, perhaps the Pope is considering adding a court jester to his team to lighten things up. Very funny. All right, this is another SMS text message. This is unsigned, but it's from a 973 number. Frank, I know you are fond of professional wrestling and professional wrestling history. If you were to come up with a Mount Rushmore of 4 professional wrestlers to put on it as being the most significant in pro wrestling history, who would it be? Wow, that's a tough question. Okay. I have to put Ric Flair on there. Ric Flair, as far as I'm concerned, is the greatest wrestler of all time. And the level of impact that he's had on wrestling in 4, maybe 5 different decades is like nobody's ever had. And he was the face of the NWA for so many years, and then of WCW for so many years, and then played a big role in the WWF. So I'm putting Ric Flair up there. It's not just because he's my favorite wrestler. He's up there. You have to put Hulk Hogan up there. I don't know if pro wrestling becomes what it is today, but for what happened in the 1980s and 90s, and Hulk Hogan was a big part of that. Some people would say he was the critical element of it. And then, for the same reasons, for the late 90s, early 2000s, I got to put Stone Cold Steve Austin on there. And then the fourth, I'm trying to pick the best different eras of pro wrestling, and it's got to be the 70s, right? So the fourth one that I'm putting on there is either going to be Andre the Giant or Bruno Sammartino. I hate to not put Andre on there, but I think it's got to be Bruno. So those are my 4: Bruno Sammartino, Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, and Stone Cold Steve Austin. I think that is a strong Mount Rushmore. Okay. Email. Daniel writes, Frank, so I heard it yet again this morning. Turn your AC up to 78 degrees for fear of a brownout due to overtaxing the grid. But the same morons are also saying out of the other side of their mouth, saying that they want to plug in every single car in the country. Please explain. I can't. And honestly, and it's maybe because I don't know enough about electricity and science, it does seem contradictory. You want to conserve power on the one hand, and then you want everybody to plug in an electric vehicle on the other hand. That's Dan. That is a certain amount of hypocrisy there. Linda writes on the subject of the Pope's meeting with 100 comedians. Hi, Frank. You mentioned that you wondered why the Pope met with 100 comedians. Just a thought. Obviously, I have absolutely no way of knowing the answer to the question, but I have noticed that over the last few years, quite a few comedians have changed their comedic style, so to speak. Unfortunately, some of them have become quite vicious and cruel when performing because all they focus on is politics and downgrading those who they perceive as a political enemy or opponent. Then they generally attack the followers of the politicians whom they disagree with. I believe many comedians have set aside comedy and replaced it with politics, at times being quite cruel, vicious, and anything but humorous. Could the Pope possibly be trying to tactfully let the comedians know that through comedy and not vicious politics, they could be extremely helpful in healing some of the ills of today's societies? Just a thought. Happy Father's Day. Carmine sounds so adorable. God bless him. Stay well. Linda, thank you, Linda. That's nice. All right, Peter. Oh, no, that's not for public attribution. See here. This person writes, you've mentioned that you were banned a while ago from the Museum of Natural History. If so, are you still banned? Is it a ban for life? Just wondering. Great show. Have a wonderful weekend. You know, Linda, I never got any formal paperwork about that ban. I don't know. That was a ban arranged by John from Brooklyn. So I really can't say. I was able to go to an event there and nobody stopped me. I will tell you, when I gave them my name at the door, I was quite nervous that I was going to be asked to leave in front of my colleagues. Didn't happen. I was able to sneak my way in. Lastly, Ellen writes, hi, Frank, just finished listening to your beautiful tribute to Tony LoBianco. It was obvious from your heartfelt words that you held this man in very high esteem, not only for his talent, but for the kind of person he was. Frank, your tributes are typically some of the best I've ever heard, and this was no exception. But what confounds me this time around was how you managed to put something together so meaningful, that was so meaningful given the fact that you just heard about his passing minutes before, another Morano mystery. Ellen, first of all, I have to give credit to Elias, who helped us dig up some of the audio there last minute. And I believe Tony did as well. It would have been even more impressive if I had my hard drive back and I had some of my older interviews with Tony LoBianco, which are on that hard drive, which is now who knows where. But I appreciate the comment and the compliment very much. Until next time.
Another letter from our listener,
The Other Side of Midnight. It's The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
Dedicate one to the ladies. Summertime sip, babe, need something to keep you cool. Now summertime sip, babe, need something to keep you cool. Better look out now, though, Dave's got something for you. Tell you what it is. I'm your ice cream man, stop me when I'm passing by. Oh my, I'm your ice cream man, stop me when I'm passing by.
Van Halen, Ice Cream Man, a terrific song. Hey, you know what I've been working on? I've been trying to, and I'm driving my wife crazy with this because she hates that I'm spending this amount of time on this when I already have 7 other radios. I've been trying to get the radio that I want at Talkers to work. It's a solar-powered radio and a hand crank radio, but I've been keeping it in the windowsill with the sun shining on it directly for days, and it only powers for 30 seconds or so. And then I put double A's in it because there's an option for double A's, and that didn't work either. So I was reading the manual yesterday and I learned two things. I learned, number one, that if the battery is fully depleted, which I guess this is, you have to give it 42 hours of direct sunlight before it'll work again. So maybe I just haven't given it enough sunlight. So I'm developing a new sunlight strategy to make sure it gets the maximum amount of sunlight. But I also saw that it won't take lithium batteries, meaning lithium AA's. And one of the batteries that I had in there was a lithium battery. So I took that out and put another AA in, but the AA's still aren't working. So this is going to be one of my projects for today. I'm going to keep it in the sun, but I'm going to try a brand new set of AA batteries. I think it takes 3 and see if that does anything because it's very frustrating. And my wife she doesn't understand. She says, look, why? You have a radio in every other room. What's so important about this radio? And the answer is, I don't know. But I just feel compelled to get this radio working. Brand new. And it's got to be something that I'm doing. So I've been reading the manual, trying to figure it out. Who knows? Maybe I'll reach out to them and see if there's anything they can suggest. We'll see. Meantime, keep asking questions.
This is Greg Kelly for Priority Gold. What does it mean to be America's precious metals dealer? It means that you're in touch with the hearts and minds of those who love this country, value our freedom, and want to protect the future. Priority Gold is that precious metals dealer. They've helped thousands of Americans back their retirement with solid gold and silver. Call Priority Gold at 888-506-6439. Receive free shipping, free storage, a free investment guide, and one of the best purchase experiences in the industry. Call now or go to PriorityGold.com.